Happy Thursday, everybody. Thank you so much for joining in tonight. It is literally a week and a couple of days before Christmas that we're shooting this. So I hope all of you are getting ready for the holidays. I can tell you that I personally am not ready. Still have quite a bit of shopping to do, but Gwinnett County schools are getting out tomorrow. So we'll have a fun-filled couple of weeks and excited to spend some time with family. But let's dive in tonight. I would love to hear from you guys where you are tuning in. Let's see. Howdy from Dawsonville, Miss Betty Ayers. Always love Miss Betty. She's such a sweetheart. I appreciate you always tuning in. I don't know if you guys caught the Fed yesterday, but Chairman Powell, as always, comes out with his comments, which yesterday actually was not a bad day. So that was a little bit of good news. So they were talking about rates going into 2024. I know that that is a hot topic that's on a lot of people's minds. Just what is going to happen in 2024 as far as housing, as far as rates, as far as new construction. There's just a lot of questions going into 2024. Believe me, I wish I had a crystal ball and could tell you exactly what's going to happen. But that's why we're here. We're going to kind of dissect what we are hearing and what we think is fact and what we think is, we won't say fiction, but maybe a little sparkle dust put over what they post. So looking at Chairman Powell, let's just look at this here. So he is talking about this is the third straight time that rates have remained the same. So if you have kept up with the market at all for the last, year, it has been a steady increase in rates. At one point, the highest that we hit was actually 8%. Thankfully, it didn't stay there for a long time, but we did get all the way up to 8%. So looking at where we are getting now is extremely exciting. And according to Powell himself, it says maintaining the target range of 5.25 to 5.5 in December of 2024. Now, you guys, that is huge. If we could get to 5.25 to 5.5, that would be an amazing rate for everybody to kind of stick with. That is a traditional good rate for the before 2020 when things were just kind of a normal market. We were at about, I think, 4.5%. So 4.5 to 5 is a good steady place. Anything below 4, we're getting into dangerous zones of something's wrong. The last time we were really low was in 2008 to 2012 when we had the recession. The time after that was obviously during COVID, and it's usually rates are dropped in order to encourage people to hit the market again. So we can't maintain those long term. So if we can get to 5%, hey, I would be happy with that. And the great thing is right now, I can tell you, I actually was talking with my lender. He was on a couple of weeks ago, Tyler Pate, and I have conversations with him regularly because I need to know what's going on in the market. And obviously I can see what you're seeing here, but I want to know what the lenders are really seeing on their end of things, because they're the ones that are going to be quoting you and anybody else that are looking to purchase. I want to know what they're seeing. So I spoke with him actually early this morning, getting ready for this live tonight. And he said that he is actually quoting people right now at about 6.25. If it is an FHA loan, he could actually get something with a 5 in front of it. So that is extremely exciting for rates as we see them, because for the past quite a few months, we've been at 7 or more. So loving what Mr. Powell is saying. Hopefully he will continue to stay with this. Now it says that they have plans in 2024 to cut rates 3 different times. So it says history will not be kind to current central bank officials. So what they're saying is basically they're not going to play the 2008 games all over again. They're going to stay where we are for right now. And if they continue to see the market responding in a positive direction, as he says, then we will start to have those rate cuts and we will get back down to a more reasonable rate, because it states in here he talks about how he understands that right now, homes, because of home prices, along with the interest rates, there's a number of people that homes are not affordable for. So getting back down to this 5.25 to 5.5 would hopefully bring it back to an affordable level for a lot of home buyers that currently have been priced out of the market. That is his ultimate goal. Now, my concern with this is we saw in 2020, in 2020, when the floodgates opened, we'll always see a kind of a stir. So my fear is if they start to do these rate cuts, are we going to see a flurry of pent-up demand coming back on? And so we're starting to see the multiple offers again and things like that. My hope is that if we start to see slow rate cuts, that maybe we'll get an introduction of people coming back into the market. I've had one client that has already done where he's come back. He purchased earlier this year. He's already looking at doing a refinance because it's dropped about a point since earlier the year when he purchased. So I told him, wait until next year when they're talking about doing cuts, and then you can do that refinance, and you'll probably be looking at a reduction of about 2 points coming off of your interest rate, which is huge. So looking at Mr. Powell here, it says today's statement was Powell's golden chance to press back on the market's undermining of his policy. Instead, they used the occasion to congratulate themselves on a mission accomplished. So, as we know, I think Powell likes to definitely use his opportunities on stage to share his thoughts and feelings. I definitely think that we're going to be seeing some positive changes next year. I don't think that we're going to be seeing them in Q1. I definitely think it will be Q2. And like he said, realistically, they're not trying to get back down to that 5.5 rate until December of next year. Now, it could totally change. We saw earlier this year, he continued to raise rates because even though he was raising them a little bit at a time, we as the people were not responding. We were still spending. We were still continuing to spend at the rate that we had been for the last couple of years. And he said ultimately that he had a goal to get to 2%. And that's where he was going to get, regardless of if we went into a recession or not. Thankfully, all of the fear mongers saying we were going to go into a recession, we haven't. It's uncomfortable for a lot of us. I know that me personally, when I go to the grocery store, my God, inflation is out of control. So my hope is that we will start to regulate things next year. I'm hoping that a lot of things will start to get back in line with what we were seeing pre-pandemic, but one can only hope, right? So let's see what some of our people are saying. It's a glitch in the matrix, but I'll take it. From BA, love it. That's actually where I'm from. My family is from. 2024 definitely going to be the year. I can see it. I sure hope so. I'm going to agree with you. I definitely hope so. I think there's a lot going to happen in 2024. We've got an election year. We've got rates going to be changing. So next we're going to dive into home sales because that actually kind of coincides with interest rates. A lot of people are questioning, what about home prices and what about interest rates? Those are two of the biggest questions, obviously, in real estate. So looking at home sales, let's take a peek. Goldman Sachs says that they're kind of putting out, what they think their forecasts for the next 4 years. So in this article, it says it expects the frozen housing market to thaw just slightly over the next 4 years. For 2023, they're estimating for housing starts to sit at 1.39 million. And over the next 4 years, they're expecting it to inch a little bit higher each year. But what does that really mean, in terms of your daily life, right? Like, how does this really apply to what you're thinking of in terms of housing? Well, for the last year, a lot of inventory has been pent up. There's still buyers that are wanting to buy. However, there are not a lot of sellers that are ready to sell right now. Why? We talked about this on the last live. If you have a 3% interest rate right now on the loan that you have on your current home, and you had to sell that and then turn around and buy at 7.5 or 8%, there's no motivation for you to do that other than a life situation that is a necessary move, whether it's a job relocation, a divorce, a marriage, something that is making you make that move. Otherwise, you're going to sit tight for a little while because it just doesn't make financial sense to go from a 3% rate to a 7.5% rate. Well, if rates drop, then that's where things change. And you have more sellers that are willing to put their homes on the market. We have a lot of people right now that are saying, I do want to sell. It's just not worth it for me right now. We have a lot of buyers that are saying, I do want to buy. It's just not worth it for me right now. So when rates drop, then they start to see the value a little bit more. And as rates drop, then you're going to start to see more sellers that are putting their homes on the market, and that will give inventory for buyers to purchase. So looking at this, that's what that number is talking about, that over the next couple of years, Goldman Sachs really predicts that they're going to start to see more and more inventory. However, they're also looking at new construction. So I don't know if you guys realize this or not, but we really have not caught up in new construction home builds since the crash in 2008. So from 2008 to 2012, home builders basically were barely building anything, and it was only going to be started when you had a contract on a home. And so if you didn't have a contract on a home, they were not going to break ground. Prior to that, I actually worked for a builder from 2005 to 2008, and we would constantly be building what's called spec homes. So if you came to my neighborhood, you would have an option of townhomes or single family homes that were already built. They were already put together, and you could tour them and you could choose, right? So there was standing inventory. That way you could be into a new home within 30 days or less, unless you wanted to have something that was a little bit longer and you wanted to build from the ground up. Then you could have one of the, build from scratch homes. But after 2008, builders got away from that because that's where they lost so much money, was the standing inventory. When the market crashed, they went bankrupt on a lot of that standing inventory, those properties that they had, because they couldn't sell them anymore. Well, then come forward to 2020, builders put it on hold again. Why? Because we were in a recession. Builders weren't actually able to be building because we were in quarantine. And then after that, when we were allowed to go back to building, there was all of these mass shortages. So finally, builders are starting to get back up on that. But it's Goldman Sachs is saying that it's going to probably take us about 4 years to get back into some sort of normal pace and normal track. But they talked about home pricing, which I thought was really interesting. And they said over the next couple of years, they think that they're going to continue to see home prices consistently rising, but at a much more moderate pace, which is what we need. In 2020, 2021, home prices were rising at an astronomical amount, and we just cannot sustain that kind of increase. So for Georgia, where I'm at, a typical rate is between 4 and 6% per year. That's a good, normal, healthy rate for properties to increase. Anything more than that, you're starting to get into dangerous territory where home prices are just getting far out of control and people are not going to be able to afford those properties. So this article talks about that they think that next year we're going to see a moderate rise of probably around 1.7%. Now, that's not a lot, but it's still going up instead of coming back down. And in some areas, this is going to be more than others. Now, the following year, they think that we're going to start to see a more realistic pace of about 3%. So again, we're not seeing that recession that the fear mongers talked about. We're still seeing increases, which is positive news. No, it's not massive increases, but these are healthy increases, which if we want to all have a stable market, this is what we need to be seeing. And so the exciting part of that is, and this is kind of what my passion in real estate really is the generational wealth, right? I've watched, I told you guys before, my grandfather come from absolutely nothing to my grandmother is in an assisted living being paid for by the life that my grandfather built. He's no longer here, but he set her up for success. And that's why I love real estate. And that's why I do what I do and try and teach families about wealth through real estate. So seeing these increases, even moderate increases, if you were to get in today and you're to look over the next 4 years, if you think about a 2% increase next year, 3% the following year, just 3% the following year, you've already gained almost 10% in equity just in a couple of years' time. So I hope that puts everything into perspective, because right now, currently, Georgia is still a really affordable state compared to a lot of the states throughout the US. So I want to dive into that next. But first, let's check out some of our comments. Did you see Ms. Smallhorn's video on did baby boomers make buying home as a millennial, Gen X, and Z hard to do? I did see that video, and I agree with some of it. Honestly, I think that a lot of baby boomers right now are staying in their homes much longer than than previously. Before, I think that when a lot of people, they would keep their home for some time, but then when their kids went off to college or, got their own lives going on after a couple of years, they would downsize. And I think a lot of boomers are staying in their homes longer. I think we all have our own thoughts, but I did think her points were very interesting. Gen Z here, so I know it's a wee bit tough. I can imagine. I can definitely imagine. So when I first purchased, I was in my 20s with my husband, and it was a far stretch for us at that time, and that was 15 years ago. So it's a completely different market now. But this is why I talk about, if you're able to get in, even if it's buying, in the moment of having renters in the home with you, maybe you're renting out a couple of rooms, or maybe you bought a home that has a basement and you can rent it out to supplement some of that income. Whatever you can do to get into your first property, you're only going to make money from there. So do whatever you can. Get creative financing, not out of control financing, but if it is feasible for you to get in, I definitely would suggest it. I wasn't born in VA. My family is from VA, actually Richmond. So right outside. And then my grandfather that I just talked about was from Roanoke. So yes, very interesting. So let's take a look at we're going to go dive into Georgia specific. So I want to share this with you guys. So we're looking at the median sales price. If you can look at this, we kind of went up and then we dove back down in January of this year, but then consistently over this year, we've continued to rise, right? And so now we're hovering right here at about $418,000 for November. And then if we're looking at new listings, this is where it's kind of gotten tough because we've continued to trend downwards. So in November, we only had 800 listings, compared to, if we look at this time a year ago, we only had 671. So we have increased a little bit, but just before that, in June, we had almost 2,000 in June of last year. So we definitely need to get more inventory in order for some of this pent up demand, to ease up. So if we look at days on market, because this is one that I know a lot of people look at in order to kind of figure out what the market is doing. So as of November, we're looking at about 18 days on the market in Gwinnett County. Now, keep in mind, a traditional market where it's not a buyer's market, it's not a seller's market, we're going to be seeing about 30 to 35 days on market for a normal market. We're still at only 18 days. So we're still in a seller's market if you look at it from that perspective. Now, that's not to say that we're not seeing any house reductions, because we have seen some of those price reductions. I think a lot of sellers have stayed in the state of mind that we had for the last couple of years. They kind of stayed in that state of mind going into this year, and it was a different market. We weren't having quite as many multiple offers, although I will say a house in the neighborhood just two neighborhoods down, they listed a week ago. They had multiple showings throughout the weekend. I think 45 showings throughout the weekend. They had 4 offers on the property. And so they're under contract for over ask. So we are still seeing that. It's just a different kind of buyer. I know when I purchased my first home, I said with my husband, we purchased a home that needed a lot of work. Now, it was fine and safe to live in. However, the paint colors were awful. It needed new flooring. The carpet was old. The kitchen was dated. But we saw potential in the home, and we knew that over time we could kind of put in the sweat equity and get our money back on that house. And that's what we did. And we ended up selling a few years later after we had made some improvements. And we did make our money back and then a little bit. Nowadays, when I'm seeing new home buyers, it's a completely different ballgame. A lot of these new home buyers are looking for a move-in ready home. They're not looking to have to do work, because a lot of the people that are graduating right now, I had a conversation the other day at a coffee shop with a gentleman, and he was saying, I don't understand how 20 somethings or 30 somethings are buying these, really priced homes. Well, when I graduated college, I wasn't making the money that a lot of these people are making. You have to understand that a lot of people that are graduating right now have put their heart and soul into getting a degree, and they're working for tech companies, and they're coming out of college making a really solid, good living. And you know what? Good for them. Good for them. And that is how there's a big difference in pay and job types from 20 years ago to today. And that's just fact. People can get mad, people can say what they want. He and I had a conversation about it, and he said, you know what? I never thought about that. In Georgia, Atlanta specifically, we've got Facebook, we've got Google, we've got what was the other one? Microsoft just came. So we have a lot of tech companies here, which is driving a lot of people to come here and work. And the great thing is, a lot of those people, obviously being a tech company, a lot of them can work remote part-time. So that kind of helps with housing, and you're not having to commute into the city every day. But so let's look, if we're looking at month supply, because this is a big one. This is where I kind of look to see a normalized market where it's not a seller's market, it's not a buyer's market, is going to be at about 6 months of home supply. Right now, we're at 2 months. So we're not into being a buyer's market yet. It is still very much a seller's market. So that's one of the things that you have to keep in mind when you're looking at, purchasing a home. It's still a seller's market. The difference from now compared to a year and a half to 2 years ago is today we are much more able to ask for concessions. Those concessions could look like an interest rate buy down. Those concessions could look like closing cost. Those concessions might look like making sure that you're getting, work done that you asked for when you did an inspection. If there was anything wrong, you can go back and negotiate on those things, asking for maybe a home warranty to be put in place. There's a number of different things that you can ask for, where a year and a half to 2 years ago, when we were in the height of that, crazy boom after COVID, you couldn't ask for anything. It was more like, do you want the house? Do you not? It's an open bid, say yes, boom, you bought it, you don't get anything. So it's definitely a different market, but you have to keep that in mind. So let's see. Thanks for sharing the knowledge. So can we expect lower interest rates next year? I do believe so. I definitely believe so. I was just saying at the beginning of the video, my lender that I was talking to this morning, he was quoting right at 6.25. And in some cases with an FHA loan, he's actually quoting things with a 5 in front of it. So next year, the Fed is talking about getting us back down to 5.25 to 5.5 by December of next year. And if that's the case, now given we don't have a crystal ball and I can't tell you for certain that's what's going to happen, but Powell seems to be really, moving forward on that's the direction they want to take things, to make things affordable again. And let's be realistic, you guys. I don't care what side of the coin you're on, political, next year is an election year. Everybody, whatever side you're on, they want to look good. And if housing is still unaffordable, rates are still high, inflation is still high, and America is just pissed off, that's not going to be good for anybody. So I do think that come second, third quarter next year, we're going to see some changes one way or another. Okay, I was born in Newport News, but I did not live in Chesterfield County for like 7 years. Got it. If you had to move to another state, what state would it be? Oh man, that's a great freaking question. I'm going to go with probably North Carolina or Tennessee. My husband would tell you Montana. I'm not that brave. I think it's a beautiful place, but I'm not ready to be that far out. I love Tennessee. Thankfully, in Georgia, one of the things that I love about Georgia is how close to other states we are. So my family and I go to South Carolina a lot. We go to North Carolina a lot, Tennessee, Florida. So I love Tennessee. I think it's absolutely beautiful. We go to Gatlinburg. Pigeon Forge is probably one of my favorites. And I just think it's a beautiful, beautiful place. I've gone to Nashville before. We had a Tom Ferry conference in Nashville, and it was absolutely breathtaking. So I would have to say probably Tennessee or North Carolina. Betty Ayers, I vote for Wyoming. I haven't been to Wyoming. I've heard it's absolutely gorgeous. I've only seen it through pictures and living vicariously through friends that have visited. I heard there's a dude ranch that is absolutely amazing. So, if I scrape some pennies together, because I heard it's like $10,000 a person, then maybe I'll take that trip. No income tax too. Yes, Tennessee. So I have a client right now that's actually going between Tennessee and Georgia and weighing the options. And they like Georgia a little bit better, but man, that no income tax is hard to beat. So that's definitely something to think about and consider. I just like Georgia because I feel like we're very centrally located. I love going to the beach, and I can be to St. Simon's Island in just about 3 to 3.5 hours. My family and I spend a lot of time in the mountains. My husband is an avid fisherman, and we spend a lot of times just about 45 minutes north from here. I can be in the Blue Ridge Mountains. And if I drive about 6 hours south, I can be on the beaches of Destin in Florida. So it's just really, really convenient for all of the, little trips that we like to take. And I don't feel like I have to fly out to any major places. I can literally be to anything in mostly 3 hours or less. If I want to go to Florida, it's about 6, but no extreme cold states for me. I feel you on that. I don't think that my blood is thick enough for a lot of the places that we've had people move in from New York. And they said that as they were moving out, there was like 6 feet of snow, which I cannot even fathom. I mean, that's taller than I am. So I don't know how I would survive that at all. But I hope that this video has helped you guys. If you have any questions, please don't ever hesitate to reach out to me. The market is changing almost daily right now. And right now, thank goodness we've stayed kind of steady on interest rates for the last 3 times. Hopefully we'll continue to see that steadiness, and then next year start to see rates continue to reduce. So if you've been thinking about purchasing, I would advise you go ahead and reach out to me or reach out to a lender just to look at what affordability looks like for you now at the rates that they're quoting. That doesn't mean that you have to move forward on purchasing right now, but I would just have a lender to talk to be ready and say, what does it look like right now at 6.5? What does it look like at 6? What does it look like at 5.5? See what your monthly payments would look like at each point in the game. See how much down payment you would have to put at each point in the game. That way you're ready to pull the trigger when, rates start to come down to where you feel like it's an affordable thing for you and you want to pull the trigger, because you should only be buying a house when you're ready. So I appreciate you guys tuning in, and I'll see you guys next week just before Christmas. Have a great week.